Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that Napoleon Bonaparte reportedly ate so much licorice that it affected the color of his teeth? Learn that licorice has been used for thousands of years, not only as candy, but as medicine. And that licorice root was found in the tomb of King Tut for use in the afterlife. Discover that licorice root has been used for over 3,000 years to treat coughs and stomach issues. And that licorice didn't become a candy until the 18th century. Learn that red licorice wasn't created until the 1920s and is more popular today than black licorice. Happy National Licorice Day to everyone listening. I mean, imagine an ancient Egyptian pharaoh, right? Just meticulously preparing his tomb for the eternal afterlife.
Oh, yeah.
And then picture a 1990s teenager just standing in a movie theater lobby, deciding what to buy before some big sci-fi blockbuster.
Two very different vibes.
Yeah, completely different realities, but they are obsessing over the exact same botanical compound. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to explore a stack of historical texts, botanical records, and candy company archives just to uncover the true story of licorice. Because the chewy rope you see in the candy aisle is actually the descendant of a potent, proven medicine that fueled ancient empires.
Yeah, and was literally buried with kings.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. How do we get from a sacred, earth-grown root to a neon, sour-coated movie theater snack?
Well, it requires looking at the actual biological mechanics of the plant itself. Like, we have to completely strip away our modern perception of it as some plastic-wrapped candy.
Right, because before anyone was extruding it into twists, it was simply Licorice glabra.
Right, a perennial legume native to parts of Asia and Europe. And the reason this specific plant altered human history isn't its chewy texture. It's a highly active compound hidden right inside its root called glycyrrhizin.
And the sources are very clear that glycyrrhizin is not just some, subtle flavor note. The records state it is 30 to 50 times sweeter than standard sucrose.
Yeah, 30 to 50 times.
But doesn't behave like regular sugar, does it?
Not at all, no. It's fundamentally different on a molecular level. I mean, when you consume regular sugar, it hits your taste receptors fast.
Like an instant rush.
Exactly. It causes an immediate glycemic response in the body. But glycyrrhizin binds to your sweetness receptors differently. The sweetness builds slower, it lingers much longer, and it provides this incredibly intense sweet sensation without the rapid crash of processed sugar.
Wow, so when ancient civilizations stumbled upon this, they essentially found a biological cheat code for extreme sweetness.
That is exactly what it was, a total cheat code.
Which perfectly explains the Egyptian obsession with it. I mean, they weren't just chewing on the raw root, right? They were intentionally brewing it into a highly prized drink called mysus.
Yeah, mysus.
And our sources indicate this wasn't some casual afternoon beverage. We are talking about King Tutankhamun level of importance here.
Oh, absolutely. The excavation of King Tut's tomb provides some of our best data on this.
Yeah.
Alongside the staggering wealth, the gold and the artifacts.
Your usual pharaoh stuff.
Right. Archaeologists cataloged massive quantities of licorice root. The belief system of the era dictated that he would physically need this vast supply to continue brewing mysus in the afterlife.
That is wild.
It was considered as biologically and spiritually essential as food and water for his eternal journey.
That raises a huge question for me, though. I understand burying something that tastes amazing, but the ancient texts from both the Romans and the Egyptians describe this root as a quote-unquote cure-all.
They did, yeah.
They used it for asthma, severe coughs, stomach problems, and heart conditions for, over 3,000 years. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, they liked the sweet taste and assigned magical properties to it. Was it actually doing anything?
Oh, it was definitely doing something. I mean, well, the term cure-all is obviously a bit of ancient marketing. It wasn't going to fix a broken chariot wheel or anything.
Right, obviously.
But regarding gastrointestinal and respiratory systems, it is absolute truth. Our sources confirm everything here is fact. Modern scientific analysis has fully validated those specific applications. Glycyrrhizin has verified demulcent properties.
Demulcent, meaning it physically coats things.
Exactly. When you consume it, it actively triggers the stomach to produce more protective mucus. It physically coats and soothes the digestive lining.
So it actually treats ulcers and stomach inflammation?
Yes. And in the respiratory tract, It functions as a powerful expectorant. It loosens mucus so the lungs can clear it out. It performs exactly the biological functions the ancients documented.
That is incredible.
What's fascinating here is the unbroken continuity of human knowledge. You have distinct ancient geographical traditions. Greek physicians, Roman healers, Egyptian priests, all isolated by vast distances.
Yeah, completely different worlds.
Yet they are all accurately mapping the exact same pharmacological truths about this plant that our modern laboratories confirm today.
That totally reframes ancient medicine for me. When an ancient Roman physician handed someone a dark, fibrous root for a chest cold, they were dispensing highly accurate, chemically active medicine.
They absolutely were.
But here is where the narrative in our sources takes a massive left turn. We go straight from the hospital bed to the battlefield, because apparently this stomach-soothing expectorant was heavily utilized by Alexander the Great to conquer the known world.
Yeah, it was standard military issue.
How does a botanical cough drop translate into military dominance?
Well, it comes down to solving the single greatest logistical nightmare of ancient warfare, which is hydration.
Oh, right. Water for thousands of troops.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
When Alexander the Great was marching heavily armored armies across unforgiving arid terrain, finding fresh water was nearly impossible. So he mandated that his soldiers chew licorice root while they marched.
So the troops are just relentlessly chewing on this tough, fibrous wood. I'm trying to picture the biological mechanism there. Was it essentially acting as a tactical hydration chew, like an ancient military Gatorade?
That's the primary function, yes. Just chewing a fibrous root aggressively stimulates the salivary glands.
Keeping the mouth from going dry.
Right. But the glycyrrhizin itself also plays a role. Consuming high amounts of it actually affects how the body processes cortisol, which in turn leads to the retention of sodium in water.
Wait, really? It chemically makes you retain water?
Yes. Now today, a doctor would warn you against eating too much black licorice because retaining water can raise your blood pressure.
Sure, yeah.
But if you are a Macedonian soldier marching through a desert in the 4th century BC, holding on to every drop of water in your body is exactly what you want. It was a vital piece of biological military technology.
That completely changes the mental image of the greatest conquering army of the ancient world. They are just aggressively gnawing on sweet roots to survive the desert.
It's a great image.
And the texts note that Alexander wasn't an outlier. Julius Caesar consumed it regularly, likely for similar stamina and digestive benefits. And centuries later, Napoleon Bonaparte took his reliance on the plant to an incredibly extreme level.
Oh, Napoleon was obsessed.
Yeah.
He utilized an intensely concentrated licorice extract. He consumed such staggering volumes of it, likely to soothe a nervous stomach during his campaigns.
A nervous stomach, sure.
And he ate so much that the dark pigments in the root literally stained his teeth permanently black.
Just picture that visual, the great Napoleon Bonaparte wearing his iconic bicorn hat, standing on the hills of Austerlitz, barking tactical orders at his generals with a completely black, licorice-stained smile.
It's tense, right?
It's one of those historical details that strips away the mythology and shows you just how fiercely human and dependent on the physical world these monumental figures really were.
Yeah. It proves that licorice was not a luxury item. It was a daily, functional tool for the most powerful people on Earth. But, as you can imagine, chewing raw fibrous bark or drinking pure tooth-staining black extract is not exactly a pleasant culinary experience.
Right. And that brings us to a major pivot in the timeline. If empires are built on gnawing raw roots, how do we eventually get to the chewy, manufactured candy shapes we recognize? Because you can't exactly hand out raw bark at a movie theater.
No, definitely not. The transition from raw functional medicine to a refined culinary treat really starts to crystallize around the 13th century.
Okay, so quite a jump.
Yeah, this is when the overarching problem of licorice, that it's tough and difficult to consume, is tackled head-on. It began appearing in early cakes and sweet-baked goods, but it was still highly unrefined.
Right, still kind of woody.
By the 16th century, the cultivation gets remarkably serious. English monks begin meticulously growing black licorice in highly maintained monastery gardens.
Which makes perfect sense. Monasteries were essentially the pharmaceutical laboratories of the Middle Ages. They were tasked with preserving medicinal knowledge.
Exactly.
But they weren't the ones who mastered the candy extraction, were they? Our sources point directly to Holland in the 17th century for that breakthrough.
Yes. The Dutch engineers of the 17th century fundamentally changed the trajectory of the plant. They developed an industrial method to actually extract the flavor.
How did they do it?
Well, they would crush the roots, boil them down into a thick, concentrated black paste, and then mix that potent paste with starches and natural binders.
So they separated the active sweet compounds from the tough woody fiber of the root.
Precisely. By mixing the pure extract with starches, they created a solid, sliceable, entirely edible product. It was the birth of the modern licorice confection.
They mastered the texture.
Yeah, they nailed the texture. This made it immensely popular, turning it into a massive economic driver and a cultural staple in the Netherlands that persists today.
Speaking of the Netherlands today, there is a detail in the sources that I absolutely love because it bridges this ancient history directly to modern life. It is not uncommon for modern Dutch youth to drop a raw piece of licorice root straight into their reusable water bottles.
Yeah, they just let it steep throughout the day.
It's brilliant in its simplicity. They are bypassing the starches and the candy manufacturing process and tapping right back into the pure glycyrrhizin.
It really is brilliant. By letting it steep, the water draws out that intense natural sweetener without any refined sugar.
Yeah.
They get the flavor, plus the digestive and respiratory benefits, all while staying hydrated.
It is quite literally the modern peaceful equivalent of what Alexander the Great's soldiers were doing. They've just swapped out the heavy bronze armor for a backpack and the grueling desert march for a school day.
Yeah, using ancient biological hacks for daily hydration, it shows a profound cultural respect for the plant's original form.
Totally.
But while the Dutch maintain that connection to the black root, the story takes an entirely different, incredibly vibrant turn when it crosses the Atlantic.
Yes, the color revolution. By the early 20th century, black licorice, paste shaped into tubes, ropes, and drops, is universally popular. Kids and adults love it.
But traditional black licorice has a very polarizing, intense flavor.
You either love it or hate it, and this is where the American Licorice Company completely flips the industry on its head.
Because they realize a fundamental truth about their manufacturing process.
Yeah.
People loved the chewy, rope-like texture created by the starch and binder mix just as much as they loved the licorice flavor.
The texture was the real star.
Right. So they asked a very lucrative question. What if we keep the texture, but completely remove the black licorice extract and replace it with entirely different flavors?
And the timeline of that realization is remarkably fast. It kicks off right at the dawn of the Roaring Twenties. In 1920, capitalizing on a massive boom in the American candy market, the American Licorice Company introduces raspberry vines.
The first big shift.
Yeah, they figured out how to color the starch base red and flavor it like fruit. Then, 3 decades later, in the 1950s, they perfect the formula and launch the absolute icon of the candy aisle, red vines.
The creation of the red vine was a massive paradigm shift. I mean, it severed the candy completely from its botanical namesake. There is absolutely no Licorice glabra in a red vine. It's purely a triumph of texture and food engineering.
And the public response was so overwhelming that by 1970, they had to undertake a massive production expansion. They started pumping out purple vines for a grape flavor, green vines for peppermint, and even chocolate vines.
They realized they had a perfect delivery mechanism for any flavor profile imaginable.
They turned a medicinal shape into a blank culinary canvas. But the evolution didn't stop with just sweet fruit flavors. The market tastes shifted radically towards the end of the century.
Oh yeah, they did.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you look at the candy aisle today, a huge portion of it is dedicated to intensely sour, aggressively flavored treats. We have the exact year that the licorice industry puckered up to meet that demand, 1990.
The dawn of extreme 90s culture.
Exactly. American Licorice took their classic rope base, rolled it in heavy coatings of malic and citric acids, and unleashed the sour punch line. Sour punch bits, sour punch ropes, sour punch beans, and sour punch twists. They took a 3,000-year-old stomach medicine and engineered it into an electric, tongue-scorching, soured theater experience.
And the market data proves it was a genius pivot. Today, red licorice and these sour variations significantly outsell traditional black licorice in America.
Which makes sense.
The pure sugar and fruit profiles just appealed to a broader demographic. Though it is very important to point out that traditional licorice still holds massive devoted followings.
Oh, for sure.
For example, soft-eating Australian licorice like the Kookaburra brand remains an absolute national favorite. It offers a much softer gourmet texture compared to the firmer American ropes, proving there's still a huge demand for the actual botanical flavor.
So we have this incredible divergence. On one hand, you have Australian black licorice utilizing the ancient root, and on the other, you have neon green sour punch twists that are purely sensory overload.
Two entirely different experiences.
And this explosion of pure sugar and sour acid in 1990 brings up a really compelling piece of cultural pushback from our sources. Right as the candy industry is maxing out on extreme sugary treats, we see a quote from President Monson published in November of 1990. He states, quote, "Nutritious meals, regular exercise, and appropriate sleep are necessary for a strong body."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a fascinating cultural dichotomy. The year 1990 is arguably the peak of hyper-processed extreme food trends in America.
Oh, without a doubt.
The introduction of the Sour Punch line is a perfect emblem of that. It's candy completely divorced from nature, designed solely for a massive sugar and acid rush.
Right.
The quote serves as a grounded reminder of human baseline needs. Our ancestors used the licorice plant to actively fortify and heal their bodies. By 1990, we were using its descendant merely to spike our blood sugar in a dark movie theater.
It frames the conversation perfectly. It's not about demonizing the candy, it's about recognizing what it has become. A sour punch twist or a red vine is an incredible piece of culinary engineering, but it's a novelty.
Exactly, a novelty.
It shouldn't be the foundation of our intake the way the ancient root was relied upon by conquering armies. It's the sweet, occasional punctuation mark on top of the nutritious meals and sleep required to actually sustain a strong body.
Absolutely. Knowing the 3,000-year history doesn't ruin the candy. It makes consuming it a much more mindful, fascinating experience. You weren't just chewing on sugar, you were participating in the endpoint of a sprawling agricultural and industrial journey.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a glowing candy aisle, and we followed a single plant from the sandy tombs of Egyptian pharaohs through the digestive systems of Macedonian soldiers and Roman legions.
A very long trip.
We've watched it be meticulously boiled down by English monks, steeped in modern Dutch water bottles, and entirely reinvented by American flavor chemists into a rainbow of red, purple, and sour twists.
It is a profound reminder that the most mundane items in our daily lives, even a piece of brightly colored junk food, are often anchored deep within the survival, innovation, and expansion of human civilization.
Absolutely. So the next time you are standing at the concession stand and you grab a box of red vines, a bag of authentic, soft-eating Australian black licorice, or a sour twist, take 1 second to realize you are partaking in a botanical tradition that Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, and King Tutankhamun all obsessed over.
That's pretty cool company to keep.
It really is. Which leads us to ask you, what is your flavor profile of choice? Are you a purist chasing the actual glycyrrhizin of black licorice? Are you a classic red vines loyalist? Or are you fully embracing the neon burn of the sour punch?
Whichever you choose, you are tasting a specific era of human history.
You really are. And it leaves us with one final kind of mind-bending thought to chew on. We know that licorice started as a life-saving, revered medicine for ancient kings and eventually evolved into a purely recreational, brightly colored, sour novelty snack.
Right.
If Alexander the Great's brilliant tactical hydration hack is today's sour movie theater candy, what strictly medical treatment or vital supplement from our current modern era might be transformed into a brightly colored novelty candy thousands of years in the future. Until next time, keep digging deeper. Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.